you know?
Do you need help with any notes taking?
Yes, please, that'd be great. I will do my best to take notes,
I'll send you like last time.
but if you could take some as well, between the two of us, we should get them on. Ready? Oh, okay. Let's see, today is September 4th, 2024, and we are gathering in the Ferranti School Committee room for the Policies and Procedures Subcommittee meeting. Can we all stand to salute the flag?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
In attendance today is myself, Anthony Caggiano, and fellow committee member Jacqueline Monterosso. Also in attendance is Danielle Makova and Dr. Kelly.
And
Oh, Mr. Kingston, John Kingston, my apologies, John. Okay, so the first item on the agenda is attendance and absenteeism. This was an issue that was tabled from the last meeting that we wanted to address.
yes,
Would you like to start?
yeah, so I think for me, it's, you know, the reason to put it on there is for us all to have a conversation mostly directed around combating chronic absenteeism, which I know is something that the district has been working on, and it's a national issue to bring us back to pre-COVID levels. But I think for me, it's twofold. So one, it's as we continue to review our policies, updating the school committee absenteeism policy because it hasn't been updated in 10 years. And then the second part is having more of a larger discussion of how we as a committee can really help. And this came about from concerns from constituents, but Salem was in the news because they've implemented a model by the committee in partnership with the superintendent and the entire community. And they've been able to decrease our chronic absenteeism by almost 20% in 2 years. And so just seeing those models, and I'm sure you know Dr. Strick's work. So I think at first I just wanted to start with the policy. So I printed copies of our current policy just so we can all actually see it.
Yep.
And then I also printed copies of the Salem policy that you can just pass it around. That I think is a good model that I would like to start to look at. I thought we could, maybe people want to read through them first.
Referring to JH?
Yes,
JH.
yes. So if folks want to read through the Salem one and ours, and then we can kind of discuss, I can share things I liked from the Salem one and then see how we would like to work through some changes.
This 5,000, this is Salem?
Yes. So I can give folks a few minutes to read through them and see, and then you can share like your thoughts and we can go from there.
Have you had a chance to read our
Handbook one?
handbook one? Okay,
Yeah.
good.
I think our handbook one summarizes in a very great, like, parent and student way our policy, but I think ours should, you know, be updated if it's been a decade.
Agreed.
So you guys let me know when you're all done looking, and then we can keep going.
I guess, Jackie, do you happen to know offhand, like I'm seeing similarities, mostly similarities. I don't see any distinctions between Salem's and ours.
Yes, so the distinctions more that I liked is that they enunciate more the responsibilities of parent and caregivers and also the school committee. So for example, they have a whole section on truancy, really highlighting how the committee is aware that truancy can be a problem. And they also have a whole section citing the legal responsibilities of caregivers to ensure that their students are coming to school. So I like that, as well as they have a section about chronic absenteeism and their plan for reducing it. So I think it'd be important for us as we explore as a committee how we're supporting our district to have that in our policy. And then something I wanted to get all of your thoughts on, and then Dr. Kelly, you'll have much more context here, is I like how in Salem, if a student misses school for a full day, then they can't come and show up, you know, to the sport or the play after the end of the day.
Yeah, that's already up.
So I know we have that, but it's
Yeah.
not in our policy unless
No, I don't think it's in the. school
It's in our
policy, but
handbook.
It's in the
Yeah.
handbook.
So it's still a
Especially
policy.
the athletes know that for sure.
But I understand what you're saying. I agree with making the policy,
The school committee's policy, more
right,
reflective
of
of
the
the handbook.
handbook.
Yeah, so I was thinking if you all are okay with it, we could go through it now, or I could just reflect that, do the work myself and send you all the March changes of our policy that reflects our handbook, and then a few things, if we all like them here, and then we can meet again to see what we think, or, you know, keep going from there.
So that sounds great. I guess my question is for Dr. Kelly and Dr. Mpova. Are there any additional policies or language that would help you to enforce or to do what it is you guys have to do with respect to?
Yeah, I think I mean, we've definitely struggled like everybody has with chronic absenteeism since the pandemic. But we have mostly resolved it at our other schools, other than the high school. The high school is where it still persists. Even at City Lab, our attendance, chronic absenteeism rate is way down. So one thing that Mr. Bowen and Ms. Riley have done is create a package. I think it actually went out today. They just told me today is attendance awareness month.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that September is attendance awareness month. So they put together a whole packet, including some data and national trends and stuff about the law around absenteeism. It's a little bit more of a challenge at the secondary level when kids are older. We don't have the same leverage with the courts that we have with young kids who aren't going to school, because that's perceived as a neglectful move by the parent. But at the secondary level, it's a little bit different. In fact, after the age of 16, the state won't even consider intervening. So that's one of our challenges, but I know that part of Chris's work, he was sending that message home to parents today. They have back to school night next Thursday, and that was gonna be part of the theme for next Thursday, is helping engage parents in making sure that kids are in school more here at the high school level.
So
I can get you copies of
I
that.
looked up the law. It's literally a $20 fine. If you take a kid to court, in a parent to court, it's $20.
What are your thoughts on chronic absenteeism? I was speaking with somebody, I want to say maybe in Wilmington. And their policy is that if a student is absent from school for like 3 weeks or more, they unenroll them and they have to re-enroll. Do we do that as
Yeah.
well?
We call it dropping them.
We drop
Yeah.
them from the books and they
Yeah.
have to go through. How effective is that? Like, do parents actually, how often do we do that? Do parents actually?
Yeah, we don't have a huge return rate. Usually when the kids, we try to reach out to them before we drop them. So they get a letter from the whichever school they're at saying, we haven't seen you, where are you? Then we'll send one of the attendance officers to the house. Typically, what we find is that the family has moved and just hasn't told us. And sometimes they're enrolled in another district, which we ultimately find out because then that district claims them as a student. And we get notified that we have to release them because they're registering somewhere else. But there are times when kids move out of state or out of the country, and there's no way for us to be notified if they enroll in Connecticut public schools or.
So that was their
Texas public
intent
schools.
and that's it. They're not-
Correct, yeah. There are some times when a kid drops and we continue to try to work with them and get them back in, because we want all kids to be in school if they're not, especially if they're under 18. Right now, the law says that we should be using child find, is what the law is called, to find any kids who are under the age of 18 who aren't enrolled in school. And so we do try to do that, and it's typically through Doug Goodwin and his program down at the Parent Information Center. then tries to get the kids back in school if they're not in school.
How about tides? Kids being late.
Yeah,
Because I know
so,
a lot of Facebook parents who claim my child was late 50 times, no one's saying anything, and I was just wondering where we are with that. Is it still bad right now?
it's,
Are we on top of it?
we are on top of it. It's better than it was. Now that we have the engagement coordinators at the high school for each of the houses, they're the ones who are tracking individual students who have excessive absenteeism. And they're monitoring that and calling home and checking on that. The parents can check through the parent portal every single day to see if their kid was late to any class, absent from any class, or anything else. And I think one of the things that we need parents to do is help us out with that. And reach back to the school if they're seeing things that they wouldn't expect. Like we've had parents who, we've called and said they've been late to first period every day for 3 weeks. And the parent says, what are you talking about? I dropped them off at the front door. Well, they're walking away and they're going to meet their friends at Dunkin' Donuts or whatever. Having that communication between the school and the family is critical to stopping those things, but it's definitely a two-way street. And, we have 5 people who are trying to monitor 2,200 kids.
Yeah.
That's all we have for doing that engagement coordination work. But the parents might have 1 or 2 or 3. So we need them to reach back to us as well. If they're seeing something that doesn't jive with what they think is happening, then reach out to the assistant principal or the engagement coordinator or the social worker or whoever and try to connect and so that,
Superintendent, but we are reaching out to the parents.
Oh, yeah.
too.
yep,
No, because like I said, the most important thing is we try to be consistent with the policies, and if we don't have consistent with this policy, then they're
right,
gonna challenge us on this policy
yep.
and on this one.
And I do think that the message, let me see if I can, or Danielle, can you, go make copies of, this is the packet that, Chris was sending to everybody today.
Yeah, and I
It's
think,
not really well, I mean, it has the policy in it, but it's more giving parents information on why they need to track their kids' attendance.
which is so good because we know that it's system level changes that will come, like involving the caregivers and the students and reminding them why that's important. And I know that we're doing that. And so I'm just wondering, what is the next level that our committee can take? Like, for example, if this existed with the Diversity Advisory Board or the DI subcommittee, I know some districts have data dashboards just for the committee to track attendance, to just be on top of our responsibilities and see kind of like how it's moving. So I just want us to maybe explore what are things, and so I was in the middle of kind of just typing up a report of my research that I can give to the full committee, and then we can see what continues, because of course, we're not gonna get to pre-pandemic levels within a few years. In 2019, our chronic absenteeism was 11%, but we increased actually last year, and in 23, it was 19, last year it was 20%. So I think seeing how we can support at a bigger level, and so what I was thinking for myself, we can do this as a committee, or I can invite you all. I wanna have just like some conversations with like our different PTAs or English language parent councils to start that buy-in, like see what they think are some of the top problems and solutions, so that when we present this to our community, they've already been part of it from the beginning, and they know we've met with them to just continue that engagement, and it's not just falling on you or the high school principal.
Do we use that? I can't remember the acronym. It's like EW some, there's a
EWIS?
database.
Yeah.
Do we use
Yeah,
that?
yeah, we do, yeah,
So
that's the
like
DESI
any point, we
database.
can see like, if there's a pattern with a particular student.
Yes, that's,
And, if they're off. what's that
Off
called?
program.
Off program
yes,
as well.
yep, that's what so we use, Power School is our student information system internally, and that's the one that has the parent portal. The parents
Mhm.
can go in and look at in real time if a kid is in class or not. And see if they were late to a class or not, or absent for the day. And one of the things that is a little different at the secondary level is their attendance is separate for every class that they take.
Right.
So if
exactly.
they're coming in late to first period every day, they're gonna end up, more than likely failing first period. If they're going to second, third, and fourth period, they're likely gonna pass those classes.
Or they could be coming into school and then leaving,
Correct,
right? So
yeah,
so their attendance would show that they're here,
yeah,
but then they're
Right.
off program. So we know.
and the
whether that's
parents
the
can
case or
see
not.
that, yes, yeah.
Is there like is it an easy way to like print that information out for the committee as we're
Yeah.
like talking about this issue? So
Oh, yeah,
can
we could
see?
totally do like a monthly summary at each
Mhm.
I was
meeting.
gonna ask you, like,
Yeah.
monthly or quarterly, something. where
Yeah.
Yeah,
we
just so
get
we
an
could see
update of
what
how
the,
it's going.
I think quarterly could be good, so it doesn't overburden you, but we
Okay.
start that trend where we're seeing how did we do last quarter to this quarter, and then I think we'll start there, but then, disaggregating it by student subgroups, because I know there's certain student groups, like, like our male students at the high school are the ones who have way higher absenteeism rates, when we look at the DESE dashboard, so just
Yeah.
starting that practice for ourselves, and then what I'll do is I'll finish typing up kind of all the research I've done and I'll present it to you all, and then we can go. Something the other districts have done is that they work with an organization called Attendance Works, and that's the email I sent you all about the webinar. I'm gonna join them, so they have a playbook that you can either take for free and see how we incorporate in our own strategic plans, or they, they work with us if we need it. I think we're doing better than other districts. I wouldn't want to say, let's use money to bring in those vendors. I think starting in-house, but I just wanted to really start that conversation with us and then take it to the full committee as well.
Mhm. Any other thoughts on this issue?
I'll be honest, I don't think, if I could, I don't think it's so much what's on paper, it's what's in practice. And my concern, at least at the high school level, from just talking to people, is the kids do scan in, but going to every class is not what's happening.
Yeah.
So they're, wherever they are, and they know where to hide better than we do, that they're not hitting every class. So they may scan in the morning, but after that.
But their
crapshoot.
attendance is entered by their teacher every period.
Right, but I think if we look at the periodic attendance, like first and fourth, it might be worse.
Yes, we'll be able to see that. We can see it by
That's what I'm
period.
concerned about. I think,
Yeah.
I think a lot of kids come to, in my opinion, a lot of kids that are coming are coming for social reasons, some of them. And I don't think they're hitting every class. So they may be recorded as being in the building, but that they attend their 4 classes like they were supposed to. And I granted, they're being marked absent because the teacher sees them not in third period or fourth period, but I know, just drive down Broadway, just drive down either Broadway or drive down School Street in the morning. There's a ton, it's not like 1 or 2, there's a ton of kids walking
Hanging around,
that
yeah.
aren't in the building yet. And then, I've driven by in the afternoon, just doing work, business, coming from City Hall or whatever, and, you see a ton of kids, it's way before school got out.
Well, don't forget that we have several hundred kids who are on internships.
Yeah, but this is a group, so they're not doing an internship as a group like that. You see 15 kids, 10 kids, they're not all going the same
Yeah.
internship. No, I understand, 1 or 2, you wouldn't even think of it, because it's 1 or 2 kids that got a doctor's appointment. But when you see a group of kids, somebody that, somebody didn't go to class.
For the, I know that we now have the, forgive me, I'm not a loss for the terminology, but the houses.
Yeah,
And so we now have like somebody who's earmarked to observe the absenteeism.
Right,
to
the
reach out to
engagement
parents, the
coordinator, yeah.
coordinator. Do they maintain reports or like of their communications with parents?
yeah, and that's
And
part
it's
of, that was
accessories
part
and
of
stuff
what,
like that?
Caitlin and Chris presented last month, was codifying and systematizing how they track everything across the houses to make sure that they're the same.
Could we include, I know that that's just getting started, but
Yeah.
could we include with the quarterly absentee reports also the engagement attempts or whatever records they're maintaining?
I think that's
Yeah.
If
great.
it's not
I
as
think,
detailed, but just so we're.
That starts to
doing
build
what
out
we're
that
supposed to do.
dashboard idea, yeah, where it's not just, and so, I'll send you all what's it called, Attendance Works has
Yeah.
like 5 key data metrics that should go if you're building a dashboard at a committee level, and one of them isn't just like the attendance and absenteeism, but the engagement rates and how
Yeah.
often like parents respond back, and I think, of course, we're not gonna have that built out by this next quarter, which has been already in 2
No,
months.
but in a few,
But,
maybe we will
yeah.
have a better idea of what's
Yeah.
going on.
And we'll start to track.
Yeah.
And we could brainstorm ways to most efficiently like reach these parents.
No, it's not on the agenda, but since we're talking about politics, when is the, for the cell phones, the pouches, when are they gonna be, are they coming in? or-
I believe they have them already. I can
Okay.
check with Chris on that.
Pouches or
Um,
lock boxes?
Lock boxes,
boxes.
sorry,
Oh.
lock boxes.
I was
Yeah,
like, we went with yonder?
no, we didn't.
I just wanted
Okay.
to.
Yeah.
All right, so that's good. We can, unless something else comes up on this issue, we can
Okay,
hold off and maybe schedule another meeting in a few months
yeah,
after we've collected some data.
yeah.
And,
And
sounds
we
good.
can all review it.
I'll send,
Okay.
and with that, I'll have the some of the March changes on the policy so we can continue to do it, because I think John brings up a good point. It's our policy, so we're updated there, and then what we're doing with our community and the students holistically to ensure that everyone's.
And did you send us the webinar or is that upcoming?
It's upcoming, I think it's next week, so I just enjoyed the
Okay.
registration link, and if you guys want to sign up for the
There was
newsletter.
webinars in the link that you sent.
Yeah, I
I was
think
watching,
that's
I was watching one back in February. The only, I won't even say complaint, the only observation is they're like an hour and a half. So it's a bit of time to commit to watch, well, especially the one I was watching today.
Yeah, they have like saved library, and they have like all their policy toolkits and like draft policies for school boards and committees that they want to take.
But the attendance works webinar is coming out.
Yes,
Okay.
the
There
one,
was one, they had
Yeah.
one in like February, because I was
Mhm.
watching it today. It's pretty good information. You know, this is some strategies, kind of.
Yeah,
I'll be
no, I
honest,
mean, hey,
Similar
you
to
know
what's
what?
being done here.
An hour and a half to make some, effective changes is,
Yeah, no, I'm just saying, if it's on a quick, yeah.
all right.
That's something we can do in 10 minutes.
So let's move on to the second issue. John, do you want to lead us in this discussion?
Unless someone, I just don't agree with the starting the kids off with the 50. I think it should have came here first. I don't think it should have been started at the high school first. That kind of bothered me, number one. Number two, if someone can give me a reasonable, logical argument other than, gee, I had a bad day and a 0 is demoralizing. I know back in the day, and I have been out of school a little while, but even college, dropping the lowest grade wasn't exactly a crime at the time, or scaling grades or something. I understand getting a 0 can be demoralizing. I get it. But I don't think starting people off at a 50 is the way to go either. I just don't agree with it. I'm not an educator. It just goes up my back though. And again, if someone can present a reasonable argument, other than, and again, if you say, oh, I got a 0 and I'm not gonna pass. Well, then maybe the policy should be, we allow the teachers to drop the lowest grade, which they're probably doing anyway. But I don't think giving
So
people,
I can speak to it if you want, as
Sure.
an educator. One of the biggest challenges, that I had, and at the time when I was teaching at Revere High School, we used to have, year-long grades. So there would be the first semester grade, the second semester grade, and that would result in your end of year grade. And what would happen is that there would be kids who maybe for 3 or 4 weeks were completely disengaged. And maybe it was in October or November, and they were failing so miserably that they had no hope of recovering and would spend every day in a classroom frustrated that they weren't gonna get a grade and they were virtually impossible to re-engage. And a lot of teachers will tell you that that's what the experience was. And so one of the things that we want to do in moving to standards-based grading is make sure the grades actually reflect what the kid knows. And not just whether they had 1 good day or 10 good days or 3 good days, whatever the case may be. All of that lies in. And if a kid has a 50, if they really do well for the ensuing couple of months, they can pull that over the failure level, and they're incentivized to do that because they want to get credit for that class. If they don't have any hope of recovery, it's impossible to re-engage them.
I had to do a thing for work. There were Lynn Tech teachers, Lynn Classical teachers, and Lynn English. Now, if you want to talk about urban schools, Lynn's probably right behind us or with us as far as the ethnicity and all the factors that go in an urban district. And when I told them about the 50, they thought I was kidding. And I said, no, I'm not.
John, there's a lot of people who will have that reaction. There's a lot of people
It
who,
was like 10, I'd say there, and I'm not exaggerating, it was like maybe, I think there was 4 from each. It was a civics day. And the credit union, I do community stuff for the credit union, that's my job. So I was helping out at civics day at Lynn. And there were the 3 Lynn high schools were all represented there, and I was literally talking to teachers almost the whole day. And it had to be, it wasn't like a forum about it, it was just, there was probably 100 projects, and I went around to literally 100 projects, it was there all day. So, and I talked to teachers all day, and they were like, huh? And then I've talked to, and then we do stuff with Salem High too, and I talked to them as well. And they gave me the same, huh? And I'm like, yeah, so
Yeah.
well, no, but if I feel that way, and then I talk to people, especially, Salem's not as urban as us, I get it. I know we have Salem in front of us, but I'm just saying, but Lynn's just as urban as we are.
Yeah.
And they were like, no.
but this is not about urban or not urban. This is about good educational practice, which I can't speak for those individuals, but I can tell you that this policy that we have in place right now was devised by teachers at Revere High
I
School.
know, but it never came before us and we never voted on it. That was another thing that bothered me, because grading is ours. far as I know.
I don't know what you mean by that.
They never came before us to vote that we're gonna do 50 as a policy. To start kids off with a 50 at the high school.
Does everybody get started off with a 50? Is that what you're saying?
No one starts off at a 50. What happens is if a kid, doesn't pass some items, their lowest score could be a 50.
Okay.
So it doesn't, so I guess maybe you could consider it that they could start off at a 50.
A teacher told me, and not a relative, I mean this sincerely, that she spent a weekend last year changing all her grades because she was told to add a 50 to her student scores. And that's what she told me she did for the
So-
weekend.
Who is the teacher?
I'm not gonna say, I'm not, and I'm not lying, but I'm not gonna say.
It's not that I think that you're lying, it's
I
that
don't
if
want
I
that,
knew,
no, it's.
I realize, John, what you're saying, but what I'm gonna
Yeah,
tell you is,
I
I
don't think she was
imagine,
lying to me, and I don't think she was mistaken.
can I finish?
Yes.
Okay, what I imagine is that she's not one of the teachers that sat on the committee that developed the policy. And I do think that this is the kind of decision that belongs in the hands of the teachers who are teaching the classes. And it was vetted through all of the teachers in the high school. Were there some who disagreed? 100%. There's always gonna be some who
She wasn't
disagree.
really disagreeing or agreeing with it. That wasn't her thing. I said, how's it going? She said, I spent the weekend changing grades. And I said, why is that? Because she didn't get it first day. This was last year, so it's almost a year ago, around, well, a little
This is a
later.
veteran teacher or a new
New
teacher?
teacher.
I mean, this has been in place for years, that the high school's been doing this. This is not something that's new.
Just need some clarification on it. So if someone has a 30, then you add 50 to it, and they get a B?
No,
No.
if somebody has a 30, you write down 50,
Okay.
so that they're not sunk.
Right.
They're still failing.
Right.
Because if they keep getting 50s, they're gonna fail. If they don't show up to class, they're gonna fail.
So what's the failing, like, for example,
Anything below 60 is failing.
okay, that was my question, any words?
So they're not.
So it doesn't mean we're letting them pass. It means that they're not completely sunk. They have hope. If they do the right thing and they do more work and they recover enough, they can pull the grade up. If they don't, they don't. That's on them.
But doesn't it seem like if the difference between the 50 and failing is a mere 10%, that we're not requiring much of the students to surpass that 60% and not fail?
Well, it has the same impact, right? When you think about it, like the difference between a D and a C is 10 points, between a C and a B is 10 points, B and an A is 10 points. So now F and a D is 10 points.
Yeah, because
You
they're
used an
still,
example, didn't you, with,
they're,
sorry, go ahead.
because they're still failing, like, if you get a 50, you fail, just if
That's
you get a
right.
30, you still fail.
Yeah, even if you get a 59, because you pulled it up some, but not enough, you still fail.
Yeah.
It just leaves the kids in a place where they're not completely hopeless.
This practice has been going on for a while.
Yeah,
And how has it been effective? Like, have there been students who were in that category that have
yeah,
come back from that
yes.
and done well, or
Yeah.
just enough?
No, that has helped. And then also there are a number of classes, there are some classes, especially freshmen and sophomores, that are still year-long classes, like math and English. And that's because we're prepping them for MCAS. But most of their classes, junior and senior year, are only a semester long. So even if they don't recover in the first semester, they start fresh second semester. And that's because that's part of the block scheduling. That gives them
Make it
equal
still
amount
do
of
well.
time. Yeah. Yeah. You have an example, Danielle, that I think that you gave to the school committee before. I don't know if that's worth repeating around the 80.
Yeah, it was just an example of like the number of summative assessments, and if you bomb one for a whole whatever, and I use my son as an example, if you got a 30, then you got an 80 and an 80 and an 80, you're still mathematically pretty close to doing one, or 30 is 75, and it's just the hope for a kid that gets a 30, and I've seen it as a teacher, I've seen it as a parent. There should be implicit motivation to do better, and it just gives them the opportunity to mathematically recover.
But don't we have retakes that would eliminate the 30?
Yeah, those are
Yeah.
other things that some
Right,
kids
so
can
what if,
do.
that's my point. I'm just not getting the 50. It's not settling with me, I guess. That's just my opinion, I guess.
Well, I know a lot of people oppose the 50 because they think they're giving the kids something. And they think of it in terms of kid who's not doing work and you're giving them something, right? But that's generally not the situation. That's a unique kid. That's not 85% of our student population. That's a very small percentage of our student population. And you know what? If you
You
give
mean
them
that have
a
like
50,
zero,
right,
that are
And-
starting off at a zero and
Yeah.
we'd be giving them a 50.
right. And if those kids get a 50, they're still gonna fail. You're not giving them anything. But it helps the kid that Danielle just described, who would have had a B except for that one test that they absolutely bombed. And if they did revisions, I don't know exactly what teachers do right now. When I had revisions in my class at the high school, you got half credit for everything that you corrected. So if you got a 30, there's 70 points missing, you could get that up to a 65. If you had a 20, you could get that up to a 60. You weren't like going all the way back up. So if you think about the kid who's really trying but struggles, and in math classes, that was not unusual, then giving them that little bit of extra and, making them stay after school and meet with me so we could go over the work again before they could do a retest, which was what my policy was. I could ensure that they were learning more stuff. And then they would get it. But if we only think about the very rare kid who is the kid who's not trying at all and use them to set our rules for everybody, then all of those kids who really are trying but struggling a little bit are negatively impacted by that, when they're the kids that we should be focused on. Because they're the ones that are really, really trying.
So I get that if you start with a zero, you still fail, but if I am at a 69 and I like had a family emergency, so then I dropped my grade before the grading period and I don't have enough time, does it move like 69 plus 50 or?
No,
No.
So if you have a 69, your grade's a
Oh, sorry, okay,
69.
59, yes.
Yeah.
Or if you have a 59, it's a 59. If you have a 49, it goes to 50.
if you have anything under 50,
Oh,
goes
you
to
just
50.
the balance back up to
anything,
50.
anything.
Oh, I
under
see,
50.
cause I was wondering how, okay.
But I do want to point out in the scenario you just gave, if somebody was, whether their average was a 69 or a 59 or a 49, and they had a family emergency and missed a couple of days of school, and we can give them an extension on their grades. We don't
Okay.
lock them down. If there's a real issue going on at home or with the child themselves, we accommodate for that. We just give them an incomplete, give them time to make up whatever work they missed, add that into the grade and go from there.
Is there, I know that this, I mean, in my mind, this seems like a tough feat, but is there a way to gather any data on whether, like how effective this policy has been, like, or
Yeah, I
kids are
mean,
taking advantage of it?
yeah, so one of the tricky things is if we look at the data, and we don't have a lot of assessment data for this year right now because the year just started.
Mhm.
But even if we looked at it right now, I don't know that we know what's a 50 and what was made of 50, you know what I mean? We could ask the teachers to track that. I don't know how folks did
Yeah,
about
exactly.
doing that.
No, I get it. I mean, but is there I guess, is it often that teachers are doing that? Or is this,
let me
like
see if
kind of
I
like a
can-
one-off? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where,
Let me ask if Chris, and Caitlin, if there's any way to track that.
Yeah.
where it's part of their discretion.
Yeah,
Like, that's a different story as opposed to this is the practice that this is our go-to.
Yeah,
and we've always given teachers some level of discretion in grading.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Um,
and I'm not trying to take that away. That's not my intent. It just seems like, I don't know, I guess I don't.
But-
But is it
So-
policy or is it discretion or?
It's what they require the teachers to do now at the high school. So we always give teachers some discretion, but we have to be careful with that because what you don't want is to be in Diane
Yeah.
Kelly's class where if you get a zero, you get a zero, right? And you never have that chance to recover no matter how much better you start doing. But if you're in Danielle Mopava's class, she's given the 50 as the minimum grade. And so kids in her class can recover, but kids in my class can't. And that's where there has to be some level of consistency, because that's equity. That's what's fair to kids. It shouldn't matter whether you're in my geometry class or Danielle's geometry class. You should have the same shot at passing or not passing or whatever. And that's where, Chris and the team have said, we're gonna be consistent with this.
yeah, I
This
think-
is something we're gonna do consistently.
I think also at the end of the day, you're still manually inputting grades for students
Yeah.
at the end of each semester, whether it's adjusting to the 50 or just adding in those last grades, and especially And as a first year teacher, I was very guilty of making it to the last day and having to put everything at once because I was so new. So they're still doing that. I think going back to the point, Aisha, about, Ms. Villarreal, about data is we could probably track the average of students who passed the class before this was implemented and then compare it to now, but this has been here for so
been a
long.
while,
Like,
yeah.
that data is probably just,
But maybe after the first semester, or the first term,
Yeah, we can try to
we can
look at
see
how
how
many
many people
kids,
we really scaled,
yeah,
and then take another look at it.
yeah, I think that's a good
Yeah.
idea.
I mean, just to make sure that these efforts are working, you
Yeah.
know, and if they're not working and need adjustment, then that's good too. It's,
Yeah.
yeah, and I think that'll go into like my next thing about PD, but just establishing our committee level oversight of student data as we should is good, because like when Desi comes in and reviews the district and they meet with us, one of their questions is, how often do you review student data? How is it segregated? What does the committee do with that? And so it's important that,
with each of these subsections that we're doing that.
yeah, and most committees will answer, well, we look at MCAS, and that's
Mm.
not look well. So it's good that we're all on
More than
top of this.
MCAS.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Although I will say that this committee has seen a lot of other data, like
Yes.
the enrollment in Indiana's coursework
And
and.
everything you just gave us Mr. Bowen gave us just last month
Yes,
as
yeah,
well.
yeah.
So the next steps with this issue is you're gonna look into whether or not it's possible to track,
Yeah,
and get back to us on that.
yep, and then also try to, if there's not something organic, try to come up with something for the end of first semester that we can. Some data that we could look at the end of first semester. So that would probably be
That's not,
February
that's
meeting,
not too imposing.
Yeah. right?
Mhm.
Seconds.
Can we go backwards a little bit? Because
Yeah.
I'm confused. On the attendance policy, it says, each principal or designee shall meet with any student or any student's parent guardian who has missed 5 or more excused school days. I'm not worried about the half days in a school year.
That's the Salem policy.
Ah,
That's just,
no, it says Revere absent policy at the top.
sorry. Where are you so we can?
It says student absence notification.
Oh, I see. Oh, yeah, they both have that. Your question is,
Each principal or designee shall meet with the student or student's parent guardian who has missed 5 or more excused school days or more class periods, whatever, in a school year.
was there a
What's your
question?
question?
I know there's kids that have been absent 5 days longer than a school year, and I don't think, well, maybe, I'm not saying they didn't call the
They've
parent.
definitely reached
I
out to
didn't-
them.
I didn't, no, I didn't say we didn't tell them they weren't at school that day, but they've had a meeting. Every
Yeah,
kid that's
they've
been
at
out,
least tried to.
every kid, so what this is saying, if we're following it, this is my problem with what's not what's on the paper is what we're doing. So you're telling us, or telling me, or telling whoever, that every kid, every student that was out 5 or more days has had a parent meeting,
Unexcused days.
unexcused,
Unexcused.
yes.
So if they didn't call in, the parent didn't call in. So the parent gets a call every time the kid is absent without a parent call in.
Gotcha,
So they get that notification there.
I agree with that 100%.
The meetings may not have necessarily been happening in person, especially the last couple of years, but they have been calling home and saying, do you realize your kid's been missing?
No,
this
that
many
I'll
days?"
give you, I know those
Yeah.
happen, because people have told me that, but I don't think, I think the meeting is
Yeah,
shaky at best.
that might be a little bit extreme at this point where we have such a high
Right,
absenteeism rate, that would be hard for.
no,
the high
I
school
think,
to
no,
allow.
that's my
I
whole point.
Yeah.
It's here and it's not a bad, I mean, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but it's not happening. So my problem when we have a policy is, and I'm not, if you wanna strike it, I don't have a problem with it, because you can't do it. But it's here and we're not, my problem is, there's policies in that book, policies in
But
front
I
of
don't
us.
think you
that
strike
we
it
don't follow- but we
and
don't-
say that we can't do
okay.
it. I don't think we
I know,
follow
but
our
we're not-
standards
but we're
or
not-
expectations. I
but
think
we're
we
not
try to get
following
there.
it.
Well, but, and there's gonna be things like that, right? So this policy was written in 2014,
No, I'm
11 years ago.
not asking you to do it, it'd be impossible. I'm
Well,
not
it
giving you an
probably was
impossible
being
task.
done.
It probably
for
was,
certain-
that's what I'm saying,
for
it probably
those
was
years.
done before that.
Or
I'm
we
not
do
crazy, I'm
ask,
not
we were
crazy
much
about a
smaller.
policy that we don't follow.
or do we
Yeah.
do?
That's the
ask
whole-
if-
Well,
that's the
I'm
whole
not crazy
nutshell.
about not following a policy.
Well, we're not. We're clearly not. We're not. I mean,
But I'm not
looking to
for
fight with anyone. I'm not
removing a
complaining. I'm not
policy
saying we
because
should.
we feel like we're not
You'd need an army of people to call all the parents in. But I hate to see something on paper that we're not following. And I'm not complaining about not following. but I'm reading it and I'm saying to myself, we're not doing that because we physically can't. I know we call the parents when the kids are out. I get it. I used to get calls occasionally. My kids were mostly in school, but I remember getting a text or something, not text, getting a phone call, so-and-so's out. Yeah, I know. So I don't think that's a problem. It's just, my problem with the policies overall is we have something on paper, but we don't follow it. Now, I realize we can't with the chronic absenteeism. I get it. But then why leave something in a policy if you're not gonna follow it? It's like saying, if you run a red light,
Because-
there's a law that
because-
you can't run a red light. Well,
Because
people are running
John,
red.
our task is to implement policies to make things better, right? And so why would we lower the standards? If at one time they were able to have these meetings, why is it that we should be trying to have these meetings? Maybe we're not reaching every single kid, but we should still be trying to get there. Like, I definitely don't,
I
I don't
agree with
agree
having
with
I
striking
agree
out
with having a lofty
policies.
goal, but I also don't agree with having something in a policy that isn't followed. And I'm not blaming anyone for not following it. There's a part two to this. I'm not saying we should have meetings with parents, someone's kids out 5 times in a school year. That's not a lot. You get a cold or something, you're out 2-3 days easy, one shot.
Yeah, but the thing is that meeting can deter the chronic
And if
absenteeism
you're out
if it's
sick,
nipped.
that's an excused absence. And
Right,
the-
if you bother to make the call.
And if
so
you
on.
don't, then parents also have a
I don't know, I
legal
just- again,
responsibility.
I guess
We
we
can go
get that
through
it's
it,
a
we can
fee,
go through every
But
policy
isn't
we
that
have.
the point of isn't that one of the benefits of breaking up the school into houses and to have more adults in the building, so that way we
And
can
then
have this engagement?
another question is if
So
it's
by
not-
next year, we should be seeing some different,
I guess my question to the
Data.
committee is, and to this subcommittee, and maybe it's me, maybe I have to change my thinking, and that's fine, I don't mind doing that. So what I think you folks are telling me, and that's fine, if we have a policy but we don't follow it, it's okay.
no, that's not what I'm saying at all. I
The
think,
That's
that-
what we-
question-
Okay, that's what I'm going back to. We're
but
not doing it
John,
now.
we're a subcommittee. Our job is not to enforce the policy.
I didn't say it was,
So
but I think-
that's
I
not
think-
within our
no.
purview.
but if we're not following it, why is it in it? Is a goal?
I don't think
Then
that's,
change the wording to say our goal is to have parent meeting.
no, I don't
So
think that's a
the
question for the
problem-
committee. What do you mean?
And a question here is if it's not being implemented, then how do we ensure it's being implemented?
Well, in
If-
this particular case, I don't think it's humanly possible at this time.
But there are ways that we can explore, so we could revise it, if there's more unexcused absences, then that triggers a meeting, or if it's not physically possible, then do you need us to authorize more money so that we have more people calling families, if that's what we choose?
Well, we've done that.
Yeah.
That's what one of the benefits
in
to
the
this whole
process, yeah,
restructuring
right.
has been.
Yeah.
This is supposed to be one of the benefits that they'll be able to re-engage and to
Yeah.
have these meetings and to make these calls. So, I mean, that was my understanding,
Yes,
unless I'm
and-
wrong.
No, you're right. And I think, John, it sounds like a huge lift, especially because right now we have a 20% chronic absenteeism
No, I
rate.
hear
So we probably have like a 35 or 40% rate of kids who have been are gonna be absent more than 5 times,
Right,
even
so-
by December,
Right, so
right?
this doesn't work, is what I'm saying.
Yeah,
And it's not your
it would be,
fault.
no, I know, it would
Please,
be,
take
But
that
at some
out.
point
I'm
it's
not
gonna
saying, Dr. Kelly, you're not enforcing the policy. I'm not going there.
yeah, no,
But
I know,
we've
I
got
hear you.
something on paper that's not, we have
Yeah.
something, so I don't wanna
And
take up
I
the time.
think
I'm
that,
done after this.
I
I
think,
don't agree with having a policy in place that we're not gonna follow. To me, it doesn't make any sense. If you have a rule, follow it. This is impossible to enforce
John,
at
that
this point.
logic it defeats the purpose of the school committee and our subcommittees and the work that we're tasked to perform. Why make any policies if they're not gonna be
Well, to a
enforced?
point. I mean, you know,
right, but I think what John's trying to say, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that this policy was written a long time ago when kids came to school every day. And parents made sure the kids were coming to school every day, and there wasn't the level of chronic absenteeism. Like Jackie said, in 2019,
It
our
was
chronic
only
absenteeism rate was only
11
11%.
Mhm.
Now we're over 20%. So when it was 11%, it might have made more sense to say you're gonna have a meeting with every kid on their 5th absence. I don't know that it is right now, but I agree with you also that let's aspire to it and see where we get, especially after. So this year, we're gonna have much more structure around the houses. People's roles are better defined. There are people in place whose full job is to call home. And maybe what we end up doing at the end of this year is, modifying it and say that there'll be at least a phone call and they'll be with as many parents as they
That's all I'm
can
looking
or
for.
something like
That's all I'm
that.
looking for.
But I
Yeah.
think it's too early to do that or to make that
Well, no,
change
see-
where we just restructured and we haven't even allowed that to play out to see how effective the new houses are and the new
See,
structures are.
unfortunately for me and my background, if something's in a policy, I have to follow it.
Mm.
Because what, in the banking world, examiner comes in, reads your policies, first thing they do, then they go look to see if you're actually following what's in the policy.
But,
And
but
and
I
hold
believe
on,
they are
but
though
they-
following it.
We're not, I would say we're not right
No,
now.
and-
They're not having a meeting with every.
And I'm not
parent.
faulted, and
Kids are
I
on their
wanna be
fifth
clear.
But they should be starting that with this new structuring, right?
Yeah, they should be paying more attention to that, yeah.
And the good thing is that we review these because then if something's not being implemented, then we're doing our job to provide that oversight. And if the policy is not being implemented to this level, then we have this conversation and say, okay, how can we support you
Right.
to ensure that
To
you're
ensure that this
implementing the
policy is exactly.
And I don't expect you to, I want that to be clear.
Yeah.
John isn't saying, how come you're not following this? It'd be impossible.
No, I
You
get
don't
it,
wanna
yeah.
lower the standards.
We're also coming out of a space where even at the beginning, granted the policy changed midway last year, but even at the beginning of last year, if somebody had COVID, they had to stay home for 10 days.
Right.
We're down to 5 days now, but that means if somebody calls and says Diane's gonna be out because she has COVID, okay, there's no need for me to have a meeting with that parent because
Well,
I
it's
know
an
why
excused
Diane's
absence
out.
too, it's an excuse.
You know, so there's all of
That's
those
an
pieces
excuse
too.
absence.
All right,
It is important that we do work towards actually acting out this policy because then that just increases our efforts to combat chronic absenteeism.
Yeah.
And it goes back to, we'll talk about this at tomorrow's safety subcommittee meeting, but when parents know that the expectation and accountability from the district is there for their duties and that can help us holistically. So I think, the Salem one, what they do is that they say that they're referred to the student support team. So if we want to revise this to where, we have student support teams, like
Mhm.
someone else is meeting with them, not just one individual, which is the principal. We can work on that language, but
Right.
finding a middle ground where we are not lowering our standards, but we are also ensuring that it's being implemented.
Yeah,
And maybe, once again, keeping track of these efforts
yeah,
to see how
that will help.
the parent engagement,
Mhm.
how effective we've been and how we've been able to make some headway.
Yeah,
And if not, then it's time for us to reevaluate. I definitely don't agree with lowering standards. I think we have an issue with chronic absenteeism, and the only way to combat that is gonna be through the parents. And the sooner we make that contact with the parents for unexcused absences, the better. I just don't, I think by doing away with it and not having that contact we might as well just forget about even trying to combat it.
Yeah, and we bring this all to the full committee and then we can all vote to make this one of our top priorities for this year. And we create a district-wide initiative that involves the committee in tackling this, and that's how we built all those bridges to come together where, in Salem, even the city got involved. So the mayor's office was involved in meeting with families, encouraging them, that whole effort starts if we make this a priority for us to tackle this school year and we make it one of the things that we focus on.
Okay, well, John, I'm glad that you did bring that back up. Because it just reinforced the need for us to, shine a light on this
Yeah.
issue and to stay focused on it. All right, so moving along, unless there's any more statements on attendance or grading, we'll move on to 3, the professional development.
Yeah, so it actually goes right in line. So I shared this last month where I haven't found a committee yet in the Commonwealth that has a policy on this, and I think it would be important that we do so that we're that model of continuous learning, because if we expect PD from our educators, from our superintendent level, there should be that learning from us as a committee as a whole. And so starting it off simple so that we can see how we develop it. But what I was thinking is the policy is just, statements on our commitment to continuously learn and engage in PD. And we can start by just setting up 2 things. So one, every fall we have a retreat where we meet for more than just 2 hours. We engage in reviewing our MCAS data, our attendance data. We set our goals as a committee. So for example, if this was a half-day retreat that we all came together and said, chronic absenteeism is one of our top priorities as a committee, and then we work through that. I think it's important as any organization that has company retreats once a year for us to reflect on what happened in the past year, look at the data, and then draft our 2 or 3 goals for this committee for the year. And then in the spring or summer, we could have another, just a 1.5 hour or 2 hour PD on a topic of our choosing that we need and come together to do, and just starting it with that. And I thought of making it a policy so that we're also setting high standards for whoever comes after us, right? Because if whoever's vice chair next year may have a different opinion, but if it's a policy, then we're setting high standards for ourselves to continuously learn and have those retreats and set those goals.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I answer a question? Will the superintendent be part of those retreats?
Yes, we need you to.
Okay, all right.
Yes, so I know, in other places, the retreats involve the superintendent and her team, because it's all together, it's a data presentation and
Okay,
making this
gotcha.
work. So I can draft something up and share it with you on next time we meet, or we can draft it together, whatever you prefer. I don't mind starting us off on something.
Sure, do you wanna take a stab at it and
Yeah.
just circulate
Mhm.
what you've put together and for input?
Yep.
Okay, and then the next item is the discussion of the Revere School Committee onboarding handbook. Jackie, this was something you started working on,
Yes, and now,
and I
okay.
think we all have probably our own cheat sheets.
Yeah, so I think that would be good. What I started to think of is we can make this all together, whatever we prefer. But I was starting, so this came from, as vice chair, it was very difficult to start off and kind of navigate what does a vice chair do and what are our duties. And so making something so that no one has to start over with us. And so a lot of it would just be putting like our operating handbook, like our subcommittee duties, all those documents we already have into kind of a digital and physical binder, but also rolling out more kind of like our role description. So what does it mean to serve on a subcommittee? What does it mean to be on a committee? Maybe an annual schedule of things. So I know like between July and August, it's pretty low. So if I wanted to take a break or a vacation during that time, I know everyone's, so just things we all have learned so that we can pass on to anyone else that's coming on. And I also thought of this because with the change in having ward seats, we're gonna have more people coming. So just creating something like that.
For
So that-
transition.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree, and
Okay.
it takes up less time as a committee, like if people are educating themselves on their own,
Yeah.
on their
And
own.
just for anyone new, right, just creating an onboarding handbook, where just like, welcome to the committee here, because people can take the associations, like charting the course
Right.
thing, but that's just so
That's
vague,
nothing.
like,
Yeah.
here's our cheat sheets on Robert's rules, you don't have to Google what that looks like, here's a handbook on Robert's rules, these are our procedures, instead of just sending, I know when I came on, Stacy did a great job of just sending me everything we have, but it was like 10,000 PDFs, so what if we just had a binder? And anyone who comes on new is like, here you go.
With an explanation of like, there's the policies in the handbook, there's policies that, you know, are established by the MASC, there's policies that we have. District policies,
Yes.
so it's knowing those different forums as to, you know, where to go to look for things.
And I think the biggest thing was just creating an annual schedule with key milestones, like when is the superintendent supposed to be evaluated? When is her contract over? When are union contracts over? So that, like, I didn't know we were gonna have all the bargaining units this year and the superintendent renewal. So just, we don't have an actual schedule of what we do cyclically, I think would be really beneficial to all of us
Yeah,
if we just had that on paper.
absolutely.
So I think that's something that we could work on this year and hopefully have it done by next fall, because it will take a little longer.
We could either have like a policy subcommittee meeting and dedicate that time towards working on this, if there's nothing else on the agenda, you know? If you wanna do it that way, and that way we make sure that we're pushing forward.
I think it's good.
Is that good?
And we can, in that meeting, we can set timelines for ourselves, because it might take a lot of work, it might not. But with everything else we're doing, like, we can just aim to have a first draft done by, I don't know, April, share it with everyone and just keep working like that.
Okay, sounds good.
When is the next election? Is it
Next,
Next year,
next year,
25,
a year from now?
25.
Okay. Yeah.
and they wouldn't be seated until
Right, so we
January
might be
26th.
bestowing some information on for the next people.
Yeah. Well, honestly, I'll tell you, I like the idea because in my mind, it generates some consistency. Like one of the struggles for a superintendent is, when new people come on, they often come on with their own impression of what the school
Different ideas,
department
yes,
is,
yes.
and
Mhm.
that becomes a real challenge because you're being pulled in all of these different directions, especially when there's multiple new people, so.
and just like, I didn't know how to put something on the agenda, like,
Yeah,
I know, we've updated our operating protocols, so that's a little bit more updated, but still, like, where's the cheat sheet for how do you introduce a motion, or just having that, again. set
Or the
as an
order of
example.
things, like, you know, the order of issues are going to subcommittee, then to the full committee, and yeah, you're right.
Or
No,
even
no.
like, I mean, I still struggle with what goes under old business, what's
What goes
new
under
business,
new.
what's goes under
Mhm.
motions.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Cause
And-
sometimes there's things that could fit all of those categories.
and we have a lot of those policies already, but if we just put it all in a digital binder and in a physical for anyone who wants it, then I always think about like, how do we set an example for other committees? Because we are so far ahead now and just this past year from other districts, and so continuing to set that bar is.
Yeah, no, it's great. In fact, if you want to get started and we could start with like a Google Doc that we can all access and make our comments and things on,
Yeah,
maybe that's a good way for people to be able to do it on their own time.
okay, I think that's great.
Maybe it'll be more efficient that way.
Because what I started was just like a list of all the things I think should
To
go on
include.
there, so I could just start that and we can all kind of come up together with what are things we wish we knew when we came on. What are things I have that I wish someone else would know, and then we can start to build up the content.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Can I make another suggestion? If you're all amenable to it, I think that anybody who's elected in November should be fully engaged between November and January when they actually take office. So
Oh, I
they're not
agree.
missing out on, like, I wish we had worked more together between November when you and Tony
Right.
came on board and Jackie, when you came on board, and not wait until January
Right,
to start doing that work together.
right. And attending the meetings and.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Well, that's
mean,
just by like extending an invitation out
Yeah,
And like you
but we
can-
should make it
Administration,
a
but to-
requirement.
the committee
Yeah.
meetings also.
yeah, and we are in a little bit of a fishy situation because technically, like, we're not the committee, so it should be I think it should be the
It would come
vice
from
chair,
us.
the chair should invite any newly elected, not yet seated members to participate.
Well, maybe we should make it known that in this handbook or beforehand, that the
saying.
expectation is that, you know, upon being elected, that you immediately start your,
I love that idea.
Your
and
service.
Snapping into.
and attending meetings. That's the expectation.
I think setting our expectations in our code of conduct, which can be difficult because we're elected officials, right? So at the end of the day, if I don't wanna come to any of your optional stuff, I wouldn't come, right? But if we already set a code of conduct where we're saying like, this is what we expect of elected officials, I think that echoes what our community expects as well. And it just shows the level that we take this job seriously, and it's already setting it up for whoever comes after. Like I know Stacy reached out to you, when you all won and came on, and you attended a few of those like retreats we had before you were sworn in, and so you were starting to like get acclimated, and I think that's a model that anyone new should replicate. So they also know that when they run, this is something serious, like it's not, you know, I get a lot of comments from folks like, well, it's school committee, it's not city council, like that should be an easy race. Like, the work we do is so intense, like.
Nobody has no clue as to
Yeah.
the work and the number of
Exactly,
hours
Exactly,
that,
so we start
that
to.
many of us put into it.
If we start to set the bar, people understand, you don't just run for this because you want elected office, like there's so much work. It's not just a monthly meeting
Right.
for people who come.
No, absolutely not. I think I say that, find myself saying that quite often.
Yeah,
Okay, so the onboarding handbook, we'll do that in like a Google Doc
Yeah.
or some type of doc that we can all access.
Yes.
Okay, so the next thing is, issue of the minutes. So when we last spoke, we had an agreement about the minutes that, we discussed what the expectation was with respect to minutes, that it's not, you know, that during our meetings, we're not to keep minutes of everything that's said, but more so the action and the things that occurred during that meeting.
It should be a summary of the discussion, but it should be accurate as possible.
Right, as accurate as possible,
Public.
but there are specifically, in the event that there are moments when a committee member requests to be on the record, then they should make that known to Robin or whoever's sitting in and taking minutes, that they wish to be on the record with respect to their particular position on an issue.
and that's when they would get named, it would say,
Even if they're not named, they don't have to be named, but if they,
well,
But
that's
if
what
they-
I'm thinking
but
would
if they
be the
want-
difference,
yeah, I
right?
guess so. Yeah, exactly. I'm fine with being, for me, I'm fine with being named, and I'm fine with not being named as long as the position is made known. And
Right.
it's only usually gonna be when there's a disparity or I have a disagreement with
Exactly.
everybody else on the committee.
Yeah.
Or most people on the committee.
Exactly.
That I just want my feelings or thoughts reflected.
Yeah.
And in the event that it becomes an issue, if I'm doing that every meeting, then the expectation is that during one of our meetings, we're gonna reevaluate this policy and,
Yeah.
Yeah, like
and
it shouldn't become
and be
like I
called
want to
out.
be quoted about everything, especially in an election. year.
exactly,
Right, yeah.
exactly. No, if somebody's abusing it, then during one of these subcommittee, we'll address that abuse and deal with it like that.
Yeah.
You know?
But also I wanted to touch on ministering of executive session. Do we do ministering? of-
No. Executive session, if you go into executive session, according to open meeting law, you do not take minutes,
But it says here, it's including executive session.
unless I'm
Yeah.
doing it wrong.
So
I
we
think
do,
that you
but they're
do
not
keep
public.
minutes, you just don't publish
Not-
them.
you
don't-
don't- you keep minutes. No, I read it. You do keep minutes.
But
I read
Keep
the
minutes,
law.
but it's not
you
And then-
have to vote on them, vote on the minutes
Yeah, and the,
in executive session.
yes, the minutes usually show like a roll call vote to go into executive session. And then same like we will or will not return to open session, and then the time it concluded in just like the subject, so.
Well,
it's-
you
And
still
so-
have to have the discussion, it's a public meeting.
Yeah, so whenever you've had executive session, Nick is present. And he keeps the minutes for you as your attorney.
Okay, but
So-
we usually should be voting on approval of the minutes during executive session also.
Do you mean we should be voting on approval of the minutes that were taken during the executive session
Yes.
At the next meeting.
at the next
Yeah,
meeting?
whenever, yeah, when we have our next executive session.
Yeah, open meeting law says that it should be you should vote on them either within 30 days or within the next 2 meetings of that.
Right, but like I said, but we should have the minutes, but we should be voting on them also
Yes,
Alright.
in
Let me-
executive session.
All right, let
To
me,
ensure that,
you can-
let's ensure that we're voting on
Yes.
any
Right,
executive.
but it has to be
session
done
minutes.
in executive session. But you can clarify that with Nick, I'm
Yeah.
sure he knows that. And
I think that I'm wondering, and I'll check with him. If you know how typically at the end of one of those meetings, he'll do a rundown of here's what's going on, here's what we're gonna do, these are the next steps.
Mhm.
I wonder if that's the approval of the minutes, but I'll ask him for clarity on that.
okay,
Okay.
but also too, but in our packet, we should have like the minutes included. I asked Rob this for myself and everything. So this way, when we vote, we should be voting on, I didn't know we voted on the minutes
As a
until
part
that,
of the,
instead of part of the
yeah,
calendar.
it's in the consent
Consent
calendar.
calendar.
Which I didn't know, because I wouldn't have voted in favor of it. But the point I'm trying to make is, if we can have the minutes as a separate vote. So we know we're voting on the minutes. But if we can have the minutes in the packet, we don't even have to discuss the minutes, we just.
so you'd like to vote on the consent calendar and then underneath that, vote on the minutes,
So,
approval of the
For
minutes?
clarity, when you vote on a consent calendar, you are saying yes to everything that's under that section.
Agreed.
And that's why people are approving the minutes.
I didn't realize how it was set up, that it was.
But what he's
Yeah.
saying is that if he like, for instance, he disagreed with the minutes, at one of our last meetings. So if he wanted to vote against the minutes, but not against everything else in the consent
No,
calendar.
Someone
does
can
he
make
do
a
that?
request to pull it out and do a separate motion for that, but I,
So what would happen is in the committee of the whole, where you do the consent calendar, as you're going through, you know how like they'll say number one is the minutes, anybody have any questions on the minutes? You can say then, I want that removed from the consent calendar.
Okay,
So then when you come into the main meeting and
Okay.
they vote on consent calendar, it doesn't include minutes,
and
and that requires a
Something to
separate
add
vote.
to our list.
yes,
Yeah.
if there's something that you don't agree with, this is all based on facts, because it's keeping record, so we're supposed to maintain that clarity in the committee of the whole. So then that if there's ever an issue where someone is voting against the minutes and there's something wrong with the minutes because then something's not factual. Now, if there's a personal decision, we could see that, but I've never seen it come up there. So I think what I'm summarizing is we need to utilize our committee of the whole meeting well, where if people don't agree with something or it's not captured, we need to hash it out there and come to an agreement so that they get approved.
And that's another strategy that you could use, like if I just think back to what happened last month. If you said I would approve these minutes with the addition of the quote that I asked to go in there.
Mhm.
And then
you
you
could
could all vote,
amend them and.
yeah, to approve the minutes with Anthony's amendment, or,
And then also, I think Robin doesn't print them just out of practice because people review them ahead of time, but anyone can request that they're printed.
But I asked Robin anyway,
Yeah.
just to put it in my packet, because
Mhm.
I keep all my packets, so I can, instead of online, I just,
Yeah.
I can just refer back to them.
And I think what we also agreed on during our whole meeting was that if someone has a correction and they're emailing Robin ahead of time to save us time, that everyone be included. So that we know, cause like once I review it, I cross it off my mental list, like I already looked at it, so.
Yeah, and I think, but I think in my mind, what I wanted added was my position,
Mhm.
and so it wasn't up for interpretation, it was just, for me, it was factual.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
But I understand what you're saying, and we'll make a note that everyone be included in those.
Mhm.
Next steps moving forward with this, I don't know whether our district policies speak to the minutes. There might be something in here. I didn't have a chance to
There's
look
nothing big, what I would suggest is that we add a section.
under our
on
operating.
Yep,
Absolutely. Okay.
so we can, at another meeting, we can take back up our operating protocols and add a section on taking minutes.
Mhm.
And just, quote, minutes must adhere to open meeting law, and then add all our other things that we're agreeing on, so it's on paper.
Just so it's memorialized somewhere. Okay.
And one thing I also wanted to take up, because we talked briefly at the last minute about one of the subcommittees having someone do the minutes.
Mhm.
So I was doing some research, and there's a software out there like called Audit. And basically, it will transcribe the minutes
Oh,
from YouTube. And basically, and it basically costs up to 6,000 minutes if we want, like $240 a year.
Oh, yeah.
And there's also free ones, like if
Yeah.
right now, I could just have my Otter AI and they could transcribe everything. we
Right,
just
or,
did.
or we can, if we need it for more, then we could pay for more. But I'm saying going forward, it's hard, like in these type of meetings, for you to take notes and to conduct the meeting.
No, I
And
know.
I think these meetings going
The
forward. will be a
subcommittee
little more
meetings,
tense.
because
Our
this,
safety meeting is gonna be the same thing, it's
Yeah.
just gonna be a little more tense. And we need them as like accurate as possible, and if we could use like Otter, instead of us taking the notes, have Otter do the actual transcript.
would anyone be opposed to that?
I think, we should maybe see which ones we would recommend to the full committee, so maybe we need to like pick a system ourselves. And then we make that recommendation, and there was also, I like maybe trying out like having a student intern do it, we could pick someone who's a little older, like a senior. Or a member of the student council who's taking them, because that could also be like an internship opportunity for them. And then we still have YouTube just in case, and if it doesn't work, then we could try AI. I'm thinking of ways we can integrate our students.
And when we start that, if we do it.
If we all like it, then we just give it to the full committee, and if everyone approves of creating a student intern.
Vote on it today?
Yeah, let's do
Yeah,
it today
so-
because we want to move on this. And I like the idea of the subcommittee meetings. It would be great to have a transcription of everything, right? Because this is the rationale behind our policies, right? And so I think it gives a clear
Intent.
evidence
Right.
of our intent and the work that's put
Right.
behind and the thought that's put behind these
Yeah.
initiatives, you know?
So what we can do is someone can make the motion, and then we can create once the whole committee approves it, we can create a job description for a high school intern, pass it over to you all, and maybe I'm forgetting her first name, Flynn, or whoever is in charge of internships.
Oh, Diana Finn.
Diana.
Finn, yes. And then we can recruit someone, and then in the meantime, we can pick an AI software that we want to use instead to continue stuff.
So I make a motion that we ask
Then we create a student
intern,
intern.
right, or if we can't, we'll try Otto and any other to transpose our notes for our subcommittee meetings.
Second,
Motion
to,
to create job.
so motion to recommend to the full committee, the creation of a student intern.
And it doesn't even have to go to Ways and Means, because we're
No,
talking about
it's-
midnight.
It's just community service hours.
Can I make one suggestion? You might want to make it plural, because if you have one student and they don't show up for some reason, then you. Interns.
Well, I think the idea is they don't have to be present at the actual meetings. They
They're
can
just watching.
watch the meetings and do it on their own time.
Yeah, because then it's like, we'd have to create a system of only doing meetings during a certain time.
Yeah,
So
no.
The job is, we already, one, for transparency's sakes, we have our meetings live streamed. Then students are taking the time to transcribe that into a full.
But I agree with John, having multiple, because we have multiple subcommittee meetings and it might become
might be a lot for
overwhelming
one
for
kid.
one kid.
That was my thought.
So absolutely, yeah,
So-
I mean, however many you think we would need, we'll pass it on to you once it gets approval from the full committee.
Well, and that might be something that would be helpful too, if, when you're doing the operating protocols, if there's like a cadence for the subcommittee meetings, that we could plan out a year for how often each subcommittee meets, do you know what I
So
mean? And then we'd have a sense of,
Well, we're required to meet
5
so
to
many,
8.
5 to 8 times. per
oh,
year.
really?
But anytime someone refers, yeah, it's in our subcommittee operating protocols, but anytime someone requests a subcommittee meet, they can, so it's based on.
So that could be like 40 meetings.
Yeah, it's a
Absolutely,
lot.
that's what I'm
I don't-
saying, it's
we've
a
never
lot,
had- Well, I've been here 2.5 years, we haven't had 40 meetings yet.
No,
but
Yeah.
it should be.
So the goal is, to create, an internship program. We'll draft up the job description, it's community service hours, so we can cap students at so many hours. And we could start with 2 to 3 interns, and then I'm happy to, we can work on laying out all the responsibilities that they can take it on. So we need a roll call.
Right, and then we could use it, set up auto anyways,
Yep.
just for backup and just have it there.
Okay, roll call. Anthony,
Yes,
Aisha, yes, and Ms. Montrose.
Yes. And then, could you email us that software that you did research
Yeah,
on?
what was the name of it?
auto, OTTER.
Oh, the
I
same
think we're
one.
both talking about the same
Yeah,
software.
Yes,
Yeah.
oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
And so, there was something else someone used today in a meeting, maybe y'all know, it's called like Meet Geek or something like that.
Mm.
And that,
How accurate is Otter? Like, would you need to have somebody actually review Otter, like
You
the
can-
transcript it gives and make sure
You
that that's
still, you
accurate?
still do, because so it's gonna give you first of all, it's gonna give you a verbatim, but it's gonna mishear things because of accents and everything else, so you have to clean it up to begin with, but you also wanna crunch it down a little bit, like you're gonna have, if
Oh, it's
we
gonna be
ever
word
did
for
a
word.
transcript of this, it'd
Yeah,
be
yeah,
150 pages.
and it gives like
Yeah.
timestamps, and you don't need like a minute this, second this,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
we
Yeah.
would still
Should we
have.
do this anyway? Should we request, like, do the software in addition to the intern? And have the intern clean up
Clean
the
it up.
software?
Well, the intern would basically be cleaning up our YouTube meeting anyway, so they're already cleaning up.
No, they're gonna
something.
have to type up all the minutes. They'd have
They
to type
shouldn't
up
have-
all
I
the
believe that
minutes.
you can, and we can look at Otter, we can look, I believe YouTube now gives you a full
Yes.
transcript.
They
Oh,
give
it
you,
does.
oh, can you export that transcript?
I believe you can.
Oh, okay then,
Yeah.
all right, I only got so far as I was able to pull up portions, but when I tried to like
Copy
copy
the
and
whole
paste
thing
it and copy,
or
I,
download.
yeah.
Yeah,
I
Yeah.
think, especially when you have the YouTube Premium, so the student would have to could have access with all these rules to the back end of the live stream, and then, because we can pull our own live streams transcript when you're on YouTube Premium, so then we could give that to them, and that's what they work off of.
Okay, that's what it is, I don't have premium.
yeah.
I don't need, but if you're setting up the
This,
meeting, you
yeah.
have access to your own
To
transcript.
your own transcript, okay, that's great. All right, so there's a motion, it's been passed to recommend this to the full committee, and we'll make sure that we do that next meeting. Is there anything else about that? And we're gonna add this to the minutes discussion to our operating.
Yes. Yeah, that's what I said.
Discussion of donation.
Yep. Donna's choice, I think it is, not Donna's
Don't
chose.
choose, actually.
Don't
There should be another
choose.
0 O in there. Don't
Okay,
choose.
John,
I got,
you're up.
when the teachers had their meetings with the principals the first day of school, I got literally a bunch of people reaching out to me about that they had to go to their principal to do the donors choose. And it wasn't, something that, came across favorably. The other thing, and I don't know who it was, I'm not going there. One of the principals said it was something that was discussed at length at a school committee meeting. I haven't missed any regular meetings. It may have been a subcommittee meeting that I wasn't here for, because I don't attend everybody else's. I do my best to attend my own. But I don't think it was something that was discussed at length in front of me anyway.
So,
But the thing was, did you know about it? And I said, it must be in the handbook. I did look at the handbook before we voted on it. It's it's like a sentence or two on page, I think it was page 48 or something. I don't know the page number. I looked at it. So it is there. Did I miss it when I was going through? Yeah, I did. But I was surprising pushback and people that I don't usually hear from ever that were the ones complaining about it. I'm a big Donors Choose person. I've given a lot of money to Donors Choose because I think it's a good organization and, supporting the teachers and things that they want to get. But I don't recall, at least in the discussion that I was in, that, we'd include that. I was told that there was I won't say fraud, but there was some potential, somebody was doing something they shouldn't have been doing. But I think that's a vast minority and not the majority. So, I just wasn't something that I thought was a point of emphasis in my mind. And have someone say that in a meeting, I thought it was a little odd. In my estimation. And again, the people that reached out to me, and it was more than one, it was quite a few. And they're like, what's up with that? And I said, I wasn't aware of it. I said, it must be in the handbook, which it is. And I looked at the handbook, reread it, found it, but I just don't know why there's that extra step.
Well, there's two things, and you probably speak to this. We did not discuss it during a school committee meeting. I remember it briefly coming up in the context of fundraising. We were talking about, the booster clubs.
But we never came up with a new policy.
But we did not come up with a new policy for it. And the only thing that I wanted to address was, you know, I don't even want to because it's a rumor and I just don't want to even ignite anything. So let's just stick with the policy. So John has brought up the issue of donors choose and the fact that the handbook reflects that teachers and staff have to go through the principal for approval and wants to have some understanding of the rationale behind that.
Sure. I can't remember when this policy started. It's not terribly old. But it came up for a couple of reasons. One was people were putting projects up on donors choose that maybe we didn't agree with. For instance, and this just happened this past summer, somebody had put up a request that people donate for a living room set that they wanted to have in their classroom so the kids could relax and have a chill space. That's not something that we would approve. Having a beanbag chair, fine. Having a couple of beanbag chairs and a reading nook, fine. But a whole living room set, and that's what the person was requesting, a couch and a recliner, and we said, no. There have been other projects over the years that don't necessarily reflect what we think is needed. And so the policy was that if folks were gonna put a request up there, it had to be approved first by the administration. So the administration could make sure that the request was in line with what they would want to be in classrooms. And 99.9% of the projects that people want to put on donors choose are awesome and wonderful and excellent. But, you know, just having that little bit of oversight can make sure that everybody's doing things that are sound educationally. You know, and then there are some things like people would put up, requesting, for example, classroom sets of graphing calculators. And that's something that we give to the teachers, so they shouldn't be requesting that on donors choose. But there might be a teacher somewhere who's new to the district and doesn't know that they can go to their director and say, I need new graphing calculators for my whatever class, advanced algebra. And that they can do that. And so it gives us that little bit of continuity that we're not putting projects out there that reflect poorly on the district or that don't align with what our expectations would be in the classroom. That's it.
So is that determination made though at your level,
No.
or is it made at the principal's level
Principal's
as to what is acceptable and what is not acceptable?
Yeah, I mean, it was a principal, it was, actually Mrs. Rizzo who found that project that I just described on, donors choose, and we reached out to the principal and they had no idea that the teacher had put that project up, and, you know, there were a couple of principals just spoke directly to the teachers and said, you've just got to show this to us before you do it.
So most of the time, there shouldn't be an issue with any authorization.
Correct. Yeah, most of the time it just goes right through, but something like that.
So what does the process look like? Is it cumbersome for teachers? Is it another layer?
It is another layer for teachers. Yeah, they have to submit something to their principal saying, I want to go on donors choose. It can just be an email.
Okay.
You know, but they can submit and say that I'd like to put a project on donors choose where I'm requesting A, B, and C. And as long as that seems straightforward and helpful to kids and helpful to instruction, the principal's gonna say yes.
And what's like the response rate?
That's what I was gonna ask what the response time is.
It would be pretty immediate. We just went over this with administration again at our all admin meeting 2 weeks.
So it's mostly just if things, so for example, if I wanted flexible and accessible seating for my students in my classroom, that's something that would be approved.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's mostly just if someone's asking for something that the district already provides, that
Mhm.
will be given to them, or if it's things that an entire living room set for a classroom.
Yeah,
I guess the only issue that I could see is that if, you have, and I'm not saying that this happens, but if you have a principal who doesn't get back to the teacher and, maybe there's a delay there, unnecessary delay.
oh, well, the
Because
teacher
they
should go
haven't
say,
had-
what the heck, answer my email.
Right, yeah, that's fair enough.
And the other piece that we talked about at the meeting was that it is a property of the Revere Public Schools, so
Right.
we just wanted to reiterate that.
Yeah,
Right.
that
if they're
those-
using the name of their, so the way Donors Choose works is you put up a project and people contribute to it when it's fully funded. They ship whatever the thing is to you, and then you have to take pictures of your students engaging with that item, whatever it was, and send it back to them. That's how they recruit other donors to the website. So they are using images of the Revere Public Schools and our students as part of the project, and that's why we need to make sure that
It's property of our school.
it's property of our schools, but also that their request is appropriate and aligned with our mission and vision.
Okay.
I'll be honest, I wish I had known, I wish, well, I guess I wish that, in all the respect for the principals, I wish they had made that clearer when they were talking about it, because I think that makes total sense, hearing the explanation, that they didn't get that explanation. The
Who, the
teachers.
teachers didn't get? Oh, okay,
About the living room thing, because when you said that to me, I'm like, yeah, that
Mhm.
makes sense,
yeah,
but in the other way, it didn't,
Yeah.
it doesn't, because,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I think someone who asked for a living room said, that was, I
Yeah.
agree, totally, it's just, it was people that I would never heard from before. I either got an email or, Facebook message or whatever, and they're like,
Well, because it's another thing, right, that you have to do.
Well, that's how-
But I-
that's
I do
exactly
think
what
it's
they said.
Important to have
it's another thing.
yeah, there was
at
another
least a single
project.
layer of accountability.
There was another project that was posted that described our students as extremely poor. And requesting snacks to the classroom, and well, we don't want food in the classrooms, right? And we give every kid free breakfast and every kid free lunch, and so we don't necessarily want to be out there with that image of our Revere Public Schools, like we're not feeding the kids and they're too desperately poor to eat any place else, right? So that's another,
We already do that with the bed.
yeah. I
In
know,
order to
but
get the
that,
free
but that's what I
breakfast and the
mean,
free
like that
lunch, I
teacher
mean.
didn't seek permission before posting that job. And so the principal was able to go back to them and say. "Would it-"
It just
You
looks
know,
lousy on the
yeah.
district.
Because people would assume that we're not feeding them. if they
Right,
see
of
that, right?
course. Of course,
Thank you.
thank you. Okay, there being no other items on the agenda, I will schedule a policy and subcommittee meeting for maybe 3 months out.
I think we'll have the absenteeism policy at least updated before that. Do you want to shoot for maybe like end of October or early November?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, oh yeah, the work we could do that we discussed today can
Yeah.
be done in the meantime, but as far as having the data and to review that data, we'll give it at least three months.
Yeah, so we'll have, we won't have the data on the fifties until the end of January.
Right, but
But we can have some data
On the
updates on the
attendance.
attendance.
Yeah.
End of November.
End of November is the end of
Beginning of
first
December.
quarter.
First quarter.
so we can look for, shoot for December, a
Yeah,
December meeting.
perfect.
I think also, should that be the, like, the whole committee sees, like, should that be more something that goes to the full committee?
I mean, I
Updates and
think,
updates?
I think the work, reviewing it and
That's
analyzing
true.
it
If that's-
belongs in subcommittee.
you're right.
And then we can share our findings or, we
Yeah, the
can
high
share the
level.
information for
Yeah.
the committee to look at on their own time, but as far
Yeah.
as the actual work
Mhm.
and review
I
and
agree.
discussion,
Yeah,
we'll have that.
Perfect.
I'm gonna just note here, shoot for a December meeting to review the data.
And then I'll clean these notes up and send them to you, Aisha, and then
Thank
you
you.
can, add to them and tweak them, because
Awesome.
the next steps and stuff like that.
Thank you so much.
So motion
Okay, can I have
to,
a motion to adjourn?
motion, to adjourn.
Second.